Hey guys, so I've now wrapped up the tortious interference slash breach of contract videos, and I've covered the WGA rules on Ryan Reynolds' conduct of It Ends With Us. I wanted to look at the PGA rules, and specifically apply them to what we now know from the unsealed documents to Blake Lively's conduct. And a year ago, I actually did an X thread, which I have covered in a separate video, so I won't cover all of that again. And this really is not to go through all of the evidence. We'll look at a couple of pieces, but we've covered a lot of the evidence, whether it's through the readings during the unsealing process or through the tortious interference videos. We've looked at the various evidence of who's done what. So I don't want to spend a lot of time going through all of that, but I will look at a couple of pieces. And then I want to apply the PGA rules to Blake Lively and her conduct. So a year ago, my thought process was, and this is the eligibility criteria of the PGA, Mark. And my thought process was, sorry, my thought process was very much, she did, as much as I don't like it, she did actually do the work. Little did I know at that point. And I wasn't the only one. I've seen not actually Golden has said the same thing, well, whether you like it or not, she did the work. So, technically she's entitled to the mark. And that was our view. I'm looking at things differently. So if we just refresh our memories, right? So she's got to meet this criteria. This is the criteria for actors who then take on producing roles and want to obtain the PGA mark. I'm not going to go over it in great detail. It includes, but is not limited to, selecting and improving principal cast and crew, for example, director, cinematographer, editor. Well, we know she got them in, some of them through her 17-point list of demands. And that is why I always felt that document was specifically with the target of getting the PGA mark. Consulting on the overall story arc beyond that of the actor's character. So she can consult on an overall story arc, not her own character. Consulting on and approving costumes, makeup, and hair on characters who are not played by her. Viewing and commenting on dailies that do not involve the actor's character, which I think, see, a lot of this, I think, she picked young Lily for Isabella Pera's character because she commented on the dailies. She had the reshoots. Isabella Pera had to come back for reshoots in February 2024. She took over the nudity rider, even though there was already a assigned nudity rider. It was just a whole bunch of stuff that she did. And she seemed to take the whole, dressing and hair and makeup bit too far almost with Isabella Ferrer, because she wasn't just doing it as part of the film. She seemed to be doing it in real life as well for the premieres and, night out. So she seemed to be, just constantly dressing her like she was a doll. It was really weird behavior. But I think she specifically picked young Lily. And the reason I think she did that as well was to neatly tie up, because Blake Lively had complete control over her likeness. And that included anyone who portrayed like a younger version of her character. Now, Wayfair, it wasn't supposed to be that much control, but she had a right of say. And that was in her contract. She didn't sign, but either way, she will say, well, they're kind of representing her character, which she represents. So I can see how it got there. I just think it went to ridiculous proportions. And not only that, I think Justin Baldoni kind of really hit it nail on the head when he said that, Isabella Pera was fine until she spent time alone with Blake Lively. And I think it was Blake Lively who kind of fed the line that, her being asked to, well, so the cookie dough incident on the spoon, that's in the book. And it didn't seem to be that was a problem. But it was like, oh, well, I had to make eye contact with the guy who's playing my boyfriend. And it was a really weird complaint to put in her, for her to sort of said, oh, well, this is why I think Wayfair are shitheads. And credit to Steph with the Deets. She dug up this post on Blake Lively's Instagram where Isabella Ferrer has absolutely no problem. I mean, surely that looks, so much more, what's the word? Like sexually provocative than, just eating a bit of cookie dough off a spoon. I don't know. This is okay apparently, but what she was asked to do as an actress wasn't. So I don't know, go figure. But that's me. I'm already getting angry. So I will not do that and try to stick to the point. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I think she's doing. She had the daily. She was involved in all of this stuff. And the last bit then is consulting on the overall edit with the director, editor, studio, etc. Well, we know she wasn't talking to the director. She brought on her own yes man editor, and when it says studio, who are we talking about here, Wayfair or Sony? We know she was going through Sony. So she had to have category A was mandatory. We'll go through all that later on. She had to hit 2 of category B. The first one she didn't, because that was all about getting credit, getting financing, getting the intellectual property all secured and everything. And she didn't do any of that. This all had to be done before the script was greenlit. So, and she wasn't involved in any of that. So she needed 2 and 3, which she technically did have. Again, I won't go through in any great detail. What I'll do is I'll post a link to my video and my X thread on it, where you can have a look and see where my thought process was. And technically it still applies. But we now have more evidence. So it's complicated, shall we say, but we'll get there. So to start with, let's have a look just at only a couple of examples of where, in reality, Justin Baldoni was actually allowing her to input on some of the creativity and make decisions. This is a text exchange where they're talking about casting Atlas. We know that she was part of the casting process for Isabella Ferrer as well. She approved Isabella Ferrer. We also know, this is in March, we also know she'd gone wild with the wardrobe and various other things as well. So there was a lot going on. And by this point already, Alex Sachs was sort of voicing concerns about all the script rewrites that she was doing. And sort of saying to Justin Baldoni, look, she's going to be directing the film at this rate, this is not okay. And she was not happy. But this is them talking about casting decisions for Atlas. This is them talking about change. She wants to have a go at editing some of Jenny Slate's scenes. They also talk further on down about, the fact that she'd already been given permission to have a go at the rooftop scene. So, she was very much throwing herself into this. And Justin was okay with it at this point. This is stuff like his collaboration, like, do you mind if I do this? And, sending it to him, like, what do you think? And that's collaboration, and that's the difference, right? Is at this point, it was okay. And if she'd allowed the process to continue on this trajectory without any hostility, she may well have got to a point where she'd done so much work that she, naturally acquired, hit the eligibility for the PGA mark. I mean, at this point, she was not a producer. She was an executive producer. Why? Because that was the minimum she would accept per her contract. And an executive producer is not the same. It is just pretty much a vanity title. A producer is the real deal. There's this text message as well. Justin Baldoni has reached out to her to say, "Hey, can you help me pick some babies?" This is obviously to cast the baby for what the baby they had at the end of the film. But I'm now going to go through the PGA eligibility before we go back to look at the evidence we can now compare and contrast. So, producer's mark eligibility. Okay, so this is the preface. This is before we've even got into any real rules. Okay. So, firstly, we have the preface. I'm going to look at the bit in yellow first, right? So, the producer's mark may not be available to those who have been determined to have used coercive or deceptive practices to convey the impression that the PGA's standards for eligibility have been met. So, what does that mean? Well, that means you cannot use coercion, pressure, manipulation. It means inflated or manufactured duties and misrepresentation of responsibilities are all disqualifying. You cannot do any of them. So, how would that be applied? Well, if a producer gained access to decisions through pressure and then presented those decisions as producing work, in order to obtain the PGA mark, well, that's exactly what the PGA defines as coercive and deceptive. And ordinarily, if at the time of deciding whether or not to award the PGA mark, if the PGA knew of that, she would not get the PGA mark. She would be disqualified. And then we have just above that, in blue, the producing functions identified in the Guild's rules and forms are not intended, right? Big capitalized letters there, not intended to serve as a checklist to be used in pursuit of the producer's mark. To be eligible for the producer's mark, the producer should always place what is best for the production above all considerations. Okay, so what does that mean? It means producing duties cannot be manufactured. So she cannot create producing duties just to qualify. And she cannot force her way into decisions to appear eligible, and she cannot retrofit her involvement to match the criteria. So, if she demanded access to decisions solely then to later on claim that those decisions are producing work, that is a violation of this rule, and she would not be entitled to a producer's credit. So we got section C2. Okay. The eligibility of producer. Let's have a look at that. A producer may be considered for the use of the producer's mark only if they have been contractually credited and credited on screen as produced by or producer. Hereinafter collectively referred to as produced by. So whenever we say produced by now, as we go through this document, that's just referring to the title of producer for the motion picture. Now, at the time she did all these duties, she was not a producer, right? Certainly the pre-production and production, she was not a producer. She only gained the producer's title after, again, that was also coerced. I can say that with some authority anyway, because that's certainly what the text messages between Sony suggest. And here we have it, right? We've got Sanford Panage. This is the 19th of June. I think this is the day they actually gave her the credit. And bearing in mind, they said no, right from the end, from December 2022 until June 2024, they were saying no, 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 no to giving her this. Right? It's only when she literally had things over them, had the 17-point list, was threatening not to, they'd finished the film by this point, and then she was saying, well, I'm not going to produce it. I'm not going to market it. I'm not going to do this, I'm not gonna do that. And by the way, the author's not gonna support you and all this, that she literally had, Wayfarer's feet to the fire over it. But Sony, I can't believe they caved on the producer credit for her. Even Sony cannot believe this, which is ironic because you see Ange Giannetti here, right? She's like she's outraged as well. She wants to change credits of all the order of the producers, etc., etc. So I'll get to that in a minute because there are rules around that too, right? Sandra Panage, this is truly insanity. So even the producer credit, which she needed to be titled, she needed the title of a producer to even go for the PGA mark. But a side note is, right, Jamie Heath is a PGA producer. He got his PGA during this film, and he got it before Blake Lively. Now, similar to the WGA, right, but it's very highly regulated for its members, and like the position of where you are in credits, as where you're listed, whether you are first, second, third, etc., or so on. That is all like, it's all contractually agreed. We did actually see that when Josh Greenstein was kind of saying to Blake Lively, look, you know, Wayfarer legally holds the legal rights over, the order of the producers. And that is largely because Alex Sachs and Jamie Heath, who both got their PGA credits during this film, they have legal entitlement to be listed in a specific order. And Blake Lively, at this point, she's still not got the PGA mark, and she's already trying to change the credits. But worse than that, Wayfarer doesn't even know all of this. She wants, and Giannetti saying she expects Sony, aka me, to persuade Wayfarer to agree to remove the film by credit for Justin Baldoni and move her producer credit before theirs. She's not even speaking to Justin Baldoni or Wayfarer, anyone at Wayfarer. She is saying to Sony, go and do this, go and do that. Now that is textbook agency pressure. You cannot just, mess about with producer credits. You have no right because they are highly regulated. So she's already breaking rules before she's got the PGA, and she's already infringing upon the rights of other PGA members. Let's continue. Okay. C2, yeah. So clarifying criteria for actors who are also producers. Produced by is obviously, as we said, that means producers who also have a non-producing role on the motion picture may be licensed to producer's mark only if it is demonstrated that, without taking into account decisions they made in their non-producing role, i.e. as an actor, they performed a major portion of the producing functions in a decision-making capacity on the film in their role as a producer. It's underlined. That's a very strict rule. They've underlined that bit, in their role as a producer. As evidenced by 1, having substantial responsibility for the overall production and delivery of the film, and 2, making regular, continuous, and substantial decisions regarding production, budgetary, and legal concerns. And this is the key point of this wording: in a constructive and responsible manner. Now, nope, I thought I wasn't going to laugh then. I was holding that back, but no, it did sneak out there. What does that mean? Well, it means if the actor's producing duties were only granted because they pressured others, or because they used star power to override departments, or because they inserted themselves into decisions outside of their lane, these duties cannot be counted towards the PGA mark. And if they were represented as legitimate producing duties, then that is a misrepresentation. It's a big deal. Let's see. I'm gonna just quickly go to this part as well, C1, just above where I've highlighted here. Um, let's highlight this too. Performance of a major portion of the producing functions on the motion picture in a decision-making capacity. Let's look at what that means. The decision, the decisions. So the standard. That's the standard, and what that does mean, though, is you. The decisions must be constructive and responsible, and they must be legitimate producing work. But what they cannot be is someone pressuring their way into decisions, interfering with other departments, overriding the director, inserting themselves into post production, or creating conflict or disruption. Those decisions are not considered constructive and responsible, and therefore they cannot be counted towards the mark. So, what can be done about now we have information? What information do we have? Just quickly, because we got this up here. Where is it? That's the writer. Yeah, so here we are, right? We're back to this bit. Now had a different one up earlier where I gave the kind of examples of what would qualify for an actor, what would, meet the eligibility to be, credited as a PGA producer. Let's look at this again. In general, contributions to the actor's own character, marketing as an actor, and other creative input that is typical of an actor may not be counted towards the individual's producing duties if they also received an actor credit, which she did. And I said at the time, right, category A was mandatory, and my thought process, as was other content creators, is well, as much as we don't like it, she did do the work, so technically, she's entitled to the PGA. Let's refresh our minds of category A. Actor demonstrated that they personally made regular, continuous, and substantial decisions regarding production, budgetary, and legal concerns in a constructive and responsible manner. And again, constructive and responsible manner. That does not in any way, shape, or form include coercive deception, coercive or deceptive practices. You can't misrepresent, you can't override the director, you can't use your star power or any leverage or agency pressure, etc., etc. The list goes on, but all the things that common sense would say are not constructive or responsible would go into that. You cannot have Matt and Lucy Damon, getting in touch with the CEO of Sony and asking him to override a contractual bake-off process that Wayfarer were entitled to, and just for the purposes of proceeding with Blake Lively's cut of the film. You cannot have the author of the film refusing to promote the film because Blake Lively has managed to influence her. So, what do we know about Blake Lively's behavior and how she got some of this stuff? Okay, let's go here. We've already looked at the Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively text message where they're talking about her having a pass at the rooftop scene. Let's look at it from another side. Now we have this information. Well, this is Blake Lively telling Taylor Swift, "Hey, you're known for being the greatest living storyteller. Could you tell my doofus director that you love my version of the script? You don't even have to read it, but if it comes from you, it will go such a long way." That's coercion, that's manipulation. Because she's literally telling Taylor Swift, right, who is, huge sway. And she is known for storytelling through her songs. But like her or love her, right? It's a big name. And Blake Lively is literally utilizing that big name and saying, look, don't even have to bother reading it. So, it's like I could go off on a whole tangent of what is everyone's problem with not reading things, but I'm not going to. I just did. Anyway, but this is like, it's like it it literally doesn't matter whether the script is good or not. She just wants to get her own way. There's a pattern here. And I'm sure this is a conversation Blake Lively in reality had with many people, like Colleen Hoover, like Jenny Slate, like Brandon Sklenar, like Isabella Ferrer, like the Sony people, like WME. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you like it or not. Oh, it doesn't matter if it's shit or not. Just can you go and tell them? I'm sure that happened a lot. I'm sure Matt and Lucy Damon did not just decide one day, do you know what? I'm going to write to the CEO of Sony and tell him to, to override an entire contractual process, because they're not idiots. They're in the industry themselves. They know exactly what it is. If they asked me to do it, there would be a bit more, a bit more room for argument to say, well, I don't even understand the process. I'm not in the industry. I've got no idea. I can go and educate myself on it, which I have done. But, I my starting point is I don't know what a bake off is. What is that? Like, to me, I'm British, the bake off is, celebrities in a tent baking stuff, literally, the British Bake Off. So I had no idea when I was first looking at all of these, like, what the hell is a bake off? Matt and Lucy Damon would know exactly what that is, and they would know that it would be something that would be subject to a contract. They know how all this works. They're not stupid. I hope not. Anyway, I don't know them. But they have industry knowledge, significant industry knowledge. So for them to be, taking it upon themselves then to get in touch with the CEO and suggest that never mind, it doesn't matter. Just, let's just skip that process, right? Go with Blake's cut. It's great. She'll even invite you around for a game of pickleball. Then, to me, it doesn't stand out as something that someone would spontaneously sit there and go, do you know what, Blake? I'm going to go off my own steam. I'm going to go and do this. It sounds like something that Blake Lively would have asked for. And the fact that in that email to Sarah Roll, Blake Lively said, not only were Matt and Lucy Damon doing that, Colleen Hoover was doing it as well. Everyone's doing this at the same time. Everyone is trying to get Sony to bypass the bake-off at the same time. No, I don't believe it. I don't believe that for a second. I think that all happened at the friends and family screening when they were all together in a room. And I think it was Blake Lively's idea. Or if it wasn't Blake Lively's idea, it was certainly Ryan Reynolds. One of the two of them. That's my opinion. But the fact that she does actually, this is hard evidence that she gets people to manipulate the director of the film and leverage pressure, industry pressure, or star power. That's evidence here. What else have we got? How did she get the cut? Well, we had the bombshell the other day of finding out that actually she made false allegation against Josh Greenstein and used that to get herself a cut. Now, Blake Lively has been telling everyone who will listen, it's Sony's cut. It's not my cut, it's Sony's cut. It is her cut. Everyone says it's Blake's cut. Josh Greenstein in his deposition had to be reminded by Blake Lively's lawyer that it wasn't Blake's cut, it was Sony's. Even he was referring to it as Blake's cut. But how did she get it? Well, she falsely claimed that Josh Greenstein had set up a fake screening. And as Sanford Panage, I love Sanford Panage, just comes with the facts. She's going to demand her own cut. That is not Sony asking her. That's not Sony taking the film off the director and asking her to do a cut. It's black and white. She demanded her cut. She also changed the preview date because, she said no way. And now we're looking at August. And she's a terrorist. I always love going back to that. But anyway, that's how she got her own cut, and that's how she manipulated the screening dates. We know I could go through so many things. Like, I'd probably check off everything on her PGA letter where I could point to where she extorted it. But I'm not going to do that because there's just not enough time right now, and that would require a multi-part series as well because it couldn't be done reasonably in one video. Plus, we're just looking at a few things to gather evidence. So that's where so that's how she got a cut. Now let's move on to this, okay? This is Josh Greenstein saying, "Look, Blake, actually your cut didn't do that well." And this was the second time it'd gone head to head with Justin Baldoni's. And not only did it not do as good as Justin Baldoni's, the second time it did worse than the first time. So I think she anticipated Sony saying, "Look, we're going to have to go with Justin's." And then what did she do? Well, I spoke with Colleen. We're going with my cut. I'm going to get Colleen to text you, so you're not taking my word for it. So she's leveraging. Why would you need Colleen Hoover's word? That wasn't in the agreement. That wasn't part of the, the deciding factor. And then she's declaring it now. This is the cut. Says, I will work to improve it, but this is our cut, and this is what we're doing. And basically telling Sony, I can't wait. I just need an editor, and also to know that it's done. It's done from my perspective, from Colleen's, and from Taylor's. Now, why Taylor Swift has a say on this, I have no fucking idea. But then she's like, and from Sony. So that's, again, agency pressure and leverage. So why are you throwing in Taylor Swift's name into this? She has nothing to do with it. Let's keep going. Okay, so we'll have a look at her PGA letters. I'm not going to read all of this. It was nauseating the first time. So I've done a video on the read through. I've also, I've gone back to it several times, and we've done all the various things. We've been through all of this. At this point, the development and pre-production, she was not a producer. Stuff like, the location. She's put lead. It should say led. Ugh. I led the location shift from Boston to New Jersey. No one asked for that, by the way, and she didn't lead it. She demanded it. She frames these things as, as part of a team. They wanted to do this, but, I led the way to make it happen, blah, blah, blah. That's not what happened, right? She just incorporated it into her contract before even signing on. No, I'm not going to Las Vegas. Take Las Vegas out. And I think they were going to do, this film was supposed to be shot in Chicago, I believe. Was it Chicago? I feel like it was. Or Seattle. So, yeah. This was due to be filmed in Seattle, and she said, no, I want it filmed in New Jersey. Why? Because it's 15 minutes away from her home. That's the reason why. Again, she had this written into a contract, put forward names for department head roles, including hair, makeup director, photography, transportation, security, etc. She actually had all of that in her act alone agreement, that she could approve this, that, and the other. Same with, fitness trainer, nutritionist, meal prep service, wig maker, hair colorist. These are stuff she actually obtained for herself. I'm not aware she obtained any of this for anyone else. She does say not just myself, but I am not aware that anyone. Oh, unless she's saying that she got a fitness trainer for Justin Baldoni, the dude who screwed him over. But I'm not aware she got anyone else any of this crap. Called in favors. Again, you're not supposed to be calling in favors. Not supposed to be leveraging star power or, well, leveraging anything at all. Where else have we got? Okay, I'm not gonna go too far into all of this, because it's annoying. Yeah, this is frustrating. So yeah, and then we got all the people like she brought on, stuff that was in her 17-point demand thing. Like, I brought on, executive producer Todd Black. I brought in the composers. Um, she replaced the intimacy coordinator, so on and so forth. Then we got the marketing as well. Starting with the initial trailer. Justin Baldoni did not want that trailer, but it had to be approved by the following day to make the date for the release. So his back was to the wall. There was a whole back and forth with Jamie Heath over it, you know, through the night. And then he went to bed, got up the next day, went for therapy. And by that point, he just caved and was like, oh, okay. A lot of the decisions that were being extorted were extorted where there was no time to argue. And sometimes, some of them were Sony applying the pressure that, like text messages such as, well, if you don't agree to this, you're going to greatly hurt the film. I think Sony just wanted to be done. I think they were over Blake Lively themselves, like, and if they were being made to be the person in the middle, the messenger. So I think Sony were acutely aware that if they went back to Blake Lively with, a no to her demands, then, she is the kind of person who shoots messengers. So I think, I'm not kind of absolving Josh Greenstein for that threat. And it's certainly, to me, it's coercion. It removes free will. When you're threatening your partner, because Wayfair and Sony were partners in this, when you're threatening your contractual partner and saying, look, you need to say that yes to this, otherwise you're going to hurt the movie. It's all on you, blah, blah, blah. Good luck with that, kind of thing. That is not okay under any circumstances. And we went through that in the breach of contract video. But I do think Lively was the problem. I know everyone's going to agree with me here. Should we all do a Mexican wave on that point? We know she's the problem. But I can see a little bit, why Josh Greenstein would have done that. But you're going to love where I go with this next. So I just wanted to quickly touch upon as well all of these letters of support, right? We know Wayfarer did not want to do a letter. She even says in this, you're not going to get a letter from them. They got pushed for one anyway. Why? Because Blake sent Ange Giannetti over to ask to put pressure basically on Wayfarer. We've seen the text messages for that. All of these people, do I think that they truly believe that Blake Lively was doing the job of a producer? Yes, I do. Why? Well, most of them. I think Alex Sachs knew what was going on. I think Colleen Hoover had some idea, not a full, not the full picture. I do think she was being drip poison, but that's on her. Like, she should have trusted Justin Baldoni and listened to him a bit more. I don't think Sony were helping with the Colleen Hoover situation either, though, to be fair. I mean, they were doing things they shouldn't have, like given her access to, the film previews and various things, the cuts. Ange Giannetti, Josh Greenstein, Todd Black, did they likely know the reality of what was going on? Yes, I think they do. The rest of them, all the kind of department heads and directors of photography, assistant directors, etc., do I think that they knew that? I think they thought Blake Lively was doing the job, and I think visually they saw her doing the job. Do I think they were all aware of the politics behind the scenes? Like, do I think that they knew that she was actually overstepping her bounds and making decisions that Wayfarer didn't actually want her to make? No, I don't think so. I'm not. I've seen nothing that tells me that that was the case. So I think they probably did write their letters in good faith. Alex Sachs, I'm disappointed in. Why? Because she was expressing concerns early on, actually, that Blake Lively was taken over the film. She was rewriting the script. She's going to be directing the film. This is insane, blah, blah. And she was the one expressing concerns first, really, about Blake Lively's kind of, her attempt to exert control. Now, even if Alex Sachs, and Alex Sachs, actually, we've seen a conversation between Warren Zavala and, I think it's Warren Zavala and Ryan Reynolds, where Ryan Reynolds was like, well, can Alex Sachs go on record, on background, and confirm what happened, in terms of the sexual harassment complaints? And Warren Zavala was like, no, she can't, because, she didn't actually see anything. She just, had Jenny Slate and Blake Lively go to her and relay their concerns, and she believed them. So she didn't actually see anything. But even if she did, that is not. There's processes for that. There's complaint processes that they could have followed, which they chose not to. You don't displace the director and the other producer, the other male producer, Jamie, just because, there's allegations that they're being creepy or this, that, and the other. You just don't do that. You don't allow an actress to kind of overstep and take over the film. Now, we know that there was a lot more going on with Alex Sachs, like the AD got fired, the first AD got fired. She wanted to position Christy Hall in Justin Baldoni's role as director. She wanted Jamie Heath to be ousted as a producer because, she didn't feel that he was necessary and didn't believe that he was experienced enough. But that's not the point. Blake Lively was taken on as an actress, and for someone who was initially expressing concerns at the start, you don't then, facilitate that person to take more and more and more power just because they've said, this guy called me sexy. It's ridiculous. Ange Giannetti and Josh Greenstein knew full well what was going on, but they still wrote letters anyway, and that is I'm sure they were blackmailed into doing so. Not blackmailed, that's a strong word. I'm sure it was pushed upon them. Judging by everything else we've seen, all the evidence, of the kind of, demanding stuff and not taking no for an answer, I feel like that's probably what happened. I mean, Todd Black is Ryan Reynolds, he's worked with him a lot. There's quite a few people who she brought on because of the 17-point list. So she brought them on. Like Chris Sargent, the new first AD, the composers, so on and so forth. She brought these people on. So I have no doubt that they are either yes men that her husband has worked with previously, or these people just feel like they owe her because, she brought them onto the film. I don't know. So let's go back to this. The eligibility. Is there something that the PGA could do? Like now, with all this information, if someone sent them all this information and say, hold on a minute, she misrepresented her role, she, did all these things that go against your rules. Is there something that someone can do? And the answer is, yeah, actually, there is. We'll get to that one in a minute. Because to get to there, we need to go here first. So section G3, the PGA's right to rescind license to use the producer's mark. So the PGA retains the right to rescind any license to use the producer's mark upon receiving credible and substantial evidence that a produced by, i.e. a producer, i.e. Blake Lively, has engaged in the behavior described in section E2DV above. Let's go to E2DV, and I think you're all going to like this. Produced by, so this be Blake Lively's misrepresentation or omission of material information or material interference with third-party fact gathering. A produced by seeking the producer's mark may not knowingly withhold or misstate information material to the certification process. I will continue though. Or materially interfere with the PGA's efforts to gather accurate and confidential information from key department heads and crew members involved in making the film for provision to the arbiters reviewing their eligibility. Okay, let's start with that first bit. Okay, and I've highlighted the relevant bit. Okay, so I've not the bit that I haven't highlighted. I don't think it's relevant, but so what does that mean? The produced by seeking the producer's mark may not knowingly withhold or misstate information which is material to the certification process. Okay. Right. Okay. Sorry, hold on. So essentially, what that means is that they cannot misstate or withhold information which is important when they're applying. So when Blake Lively did her PGA letter, she cannot knowingly misrepresent her producing responsibilities. So by saying, "Well, I led the location change," is she's withholding information that is important, such as why did the fact that no one asked her to do it, or the fact that she negotiated it for herself. When she says that she was brought on to do her own cut in the post-production, she doesn't say that she demanded it. I hope I'm kind of making some sense here, but let's continue. So, yeah, that's a few examples of what that kind of means. Is obviously, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself, right? You cannot knowingly misstate or withhold relevant information. That would be, crucial to the application process. So, what does that look like? What can the panel take notice of? Okay, well, the panel may take special notice of any producer who knowingly withholds or misstates information material to the certification process, or who materially frustrates the truthful disclosure of any third party by, and the first one is obstructing access by the PGA to such party. Now, that's not relevant. She didn't do that. 2, this is relevant. Coaching, coercing, or improperly influencing a third party to manipulate the outcome of any eligibility determination. So, what does that look like? Well, by telling Sony and or WME to go and put pressure on Wayfarer for this, that, and the other, or by leveraging like her sexual harassment, her alleged sexual harassment, and her 17-point demand letter. I mean, in that it's she can hire a new intimate. Yeah, what is it? She can hire a composer. What the hell has that got to do with keeping the set safe? Nothing. What does it have to do with the PGA eligibility? Everything. Why did we need another producer? We already have 2. Okay, she may not like 1, but there was still Alex Sachs. What has Todd Black brought to the game? Nothing. There's nothing bad against Todd Black. I'm sure he's a really nice guy. But still, but in terms of keeping the set safe, and just to be really clear on what Todd Black thought he was brought on for. Well, let's go and actually have a look at why Todd Black thought he'd been brought on. Here's his PGA letter. My name is Todd Black, and I was brought on after the strikes to finish the feature film It Ends With Us, starring Blake Lively and directed by Justin Baldoni. Wayfarer Entertainment was the production company, along with Columbia Pictures acting as the studio. As executive producer, I came aboard for the remainder of production to support Blake Lively in achieving her vision in the most creative and economical way possible. Nothing about safety, nothing about sexual harassment, achieving Blake Lively's vision in the most creative and economical way possible. So make of that what you will. Okay, so let's kind of wrap this up a little now. So yeah, quite clear. I cannot overstate this, that you cannot misrepresent your producing responsibilities. You cannot use coercive practices or deceptive practices. And there isn't, the list of sort of responsibilities that would meet the eligibility criteria is not intended to serve as a checklist for you to take away and go, right, I need to do this. Okay, check, and then send it in. You're supposed to be kind of organically doing this role, and collaboratively in a responsible manner. You're supposed to be working with people, not overriding decisions, not inserting yourself where you have no right to insert yourself. You should not be throwing around any star power or leveraging any kind of, any threats or, extorting anything. None of this, none of what she did should by rights count for the PGA mark. Now, PGA would not have been aware of half of this. We weren't aware of it. Now we know. So what does the PGA say that they will do if, I want to get the word in. Upon receiving credible and substantial evidence that a producer has engaged in the coercive behavior, kind of detailed here on where it says, part 2 really, coaching, coercing, or improperly influencing to manipulate the outcome of any eligibility determination. What should they do? Rescind the award. That's what it says in G3. So I think the only question is who's going to tell the PGA? Because petitions like the change.org petition and various things, they're all, I can understand like the thought process behind it, and it's so lovely, and it gives you an idea of how many people are outraged. But in reality, that's not going to do much at all. What is really needed is someone needs to put together, and I'm not telling people to do this, to be very clear. I can't stop anyone from doing it, but I'm not saying let's go and do this. But what really needs to happen for anything to happen here is like a very carefully worded letter detailing all the evidence of coercion, undue pressure, leverage, etc., all of the things that we've been talking about that we now know has come to light, and then sending that to say, look, do you want to rethink this one, because this awarding this woman a PGA mark really undermines the credibility of the award itself. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I will do something on the DGA. It won't be because Justin Baldoni hasn't violated anything. So it'll be from the perspective of, have either Blake Lively or Ryan Reynolds infringed upon his Directors Guild rights. So I'm going to do that, I think, next. And I think there's an update as well in the estate of Travis Flores case against Brian Friedman. So I will do a video on that too. All right, guys, as always, thank you for watching. Take care.